rule of economic persuasion today. But remember, there's a high price tag that comes with this persuasion. Now, let's turn our attention to Ann, our employee. You know, the person who does most of the work. This is where something interesting happens. When dealing with our employees, we unconsciously take off our sales and marketing hat and put on our boss hat. It's the mindset that says, I control Ann. How? Well, I could fire her. Damn, that's control. And I pay her to do what she's told, and that's control. Certainly sounds like control. But let's check out those two assumptions against objective reality. Let's say that Ann can expend work energy on a scale of 1 to 10. We can fire Ann, but in reality we only do so if she works at 3 or less on that scale. And we also know that everybody in the company is all too eager to tell Ann where 3 is. Be on time, Ann. They'll go nuts if you're not on time. They don't care much about what you do once you get here, but be sure you're on time. And by the way, that's the culture working to orient Ann on the way things are around here. It's the culture protecting and making sure the way things are around here doesn't change. It's the unseen force that determines how much time and under what circumstances both hands must be planted squarely on our vulnerable assets as we try to get our jobs done. Okay, I hope that you got that there's no bullet in that I can fire her gun. But what about the I pay her to do what she's told threat? As I said, Ann can work on a scale from 1 to 10. We pay her when she works from 4 to 7. What effort do we get from Ann at 4 to 7? Well, we get her time, and only a minimum amount of her potential. I call this the little c, compliance. Less than half of what Ann actually has in her to give. Here's a question I've asked many a leadership team and have always gotten the same answer. Do you believe that any organization can thrive or even survive in the crazy upside-down world we live in today by getting less than 8, 9, 10 commitment levels from their employees? The answer is always a resounding no. That's not possible. And that resounding answer begs a resounding question. Who's going to make up Ann's mind to work at 8, 9, and 10? We know that answer. Just like Sam and everyone else, Ann's going to do things for her reasons, not ours. Right here, right now, it's time for that new paradigm. Hold on to your seats. This is going to be a blinding flash of the obvious. Leaders must take off their boss hat when dealing with their employees and put back on their sales and marketing hat. It's time to become aware that every company has at least 2 sets of customers, those who buy the company's products and services and those who buy work. So this begs yet another question. What might Ann's reasons be for wanting to work at 8, 9, 10? Or what does any employee want from work? Some time ago, I decided to try and answer that question myself. I went back to my good teacher Abraham Maslow and rethought his hierarchy of needs, and this is what came out of it. People work first for money, the bottom of Maslow's pyramid. Actually, I did some experimenting with this and quit paying people, and their feedback was immediate. Our survival and safety needs are always at the ready to be threatened or ready to be fulfilled, but they're always at the ready. Then I thought, people also work to fulfill their social needs, community, belongingness, and friendships. Beyond that, I thought people willingly work for their personal and professional growth needs. This is fulfillment that speaks to attaining more competence and more confidence. This is people knowing that they can set and achieve goals to improve things, including their own lives. The answer to the question, is my life making a difference, was the part Maslow called self-actualization, the top of the pyramid. When asked and answered, this question can almost always point to the fact that each person, just by being alive, can perhaps, in the smallest of ways, contribute to the planet's being a better place for all of us. So how might Ann and the others respond to a value proposition that says, come work here, and we'll do our best to help you fulfill all of these needs? Would that help leaders find and keep people who are interested in more than just money? Finders, keepers, yeah, you know the rest. Too often, it seems as if most employers feel that money is the only real offering they have. That's all they seem to talk about. But if all you have to give is money, then how much money are you going to have to give? I'll tell you the answer. More. More than the next guy who can take those people who are only interested in money away for an extra buck or an extra perk. You'll have to pay a lot more than a competitor who offers all those higher fulfilling benefits, community growth, and a real chance to make a real difference. Which type of people would you rather lead or have following you? Which organization of people do you believe would have the best chance to sustain growth in our future shock world? As the saying goes, we reap what we sow. If you think about it, the leader's job is to create the soil of the organization so that the seeds of opportunity have the greatest chance to produce a healthy crop for all the organizational stakeholders. All of this holds true whether your company has 3 or 30 or 300 or 3,000 employees. The numbers can change, but the game is still the same. The big point here to grasp is when you come to work, take off your boss hat and put on your sales hat. Every day, you're selling work. Want an example? How easy do you think it is to sell work when your followers don't want you to be there in the first place? That's what happened to my friend Peter Schutz. He was a client of mine who happened to be in Europe about the time that Porsche had taken a financial dip. Dr. Porsche met with Peter, and Peter was offered and accepted the job of president of Porsche. You mean the new president of Porsche will be an American? Peter could tell this was the prevailing attitude of his senior leadership team as he met them one-on-one. When he held his first let's get down to business meeting, he felt a strong tension of resistance in the air. But Peter had been around the block more than once. He had already proven himself as a leader in the automobile world. For certain, Peter knew the rule that people do things for their reasons, not ours. He also knew that Porsche had a history of great pride in their automobiles, company, and people. A lot of that pride was expressed in the international racing world where Porsche automobiles had often taken the big prize. But as of late, this wasn't happening. So Peter's opening to the team was a question. How do you think we're going to do in the races this year? He said his question was answered with a lot of shuffling of feet and staring at shoes. Actually, not a word was spoken. He continued, "Well, I'll take that reply as not very hopeful this year." Then he asked the team a second question. What would it take for us to win? He said the shoes staring and the feet shuffling became even more dramatic. Peter calmly replied to this group rejection by saying, "Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just adjourn this meeting, and I want you to come back to me in 1 week with the answer to the question, what will it take to win?" Meeting adjourned. Though I said he calmly replied, he told me his emotional Richter scale was at about a 9. This was his first day on the job. This is the team he had to lead. And so far, this was the team whose resentment of him being there felt as heavy and as thick as the proverbial Berlin Wall. Nothing happened for 3 or 4 days, and Peter's tension was getting even higher. You can believe that Peter was having these thoughts. Would anyone ever come back? Have I blown this great opportunity before I even got started? But the next day, one person came, his head still down, and told Peter that there was a prototype body of a race car stored in one of the warehouses. That was a start. After that, a couple of members mentioned a new engine that was being tinkered with in research and development. A few other hints of possible parts that might make up a real race car came to Peter as the 1-week deadline was nearing an end. The team even began talking to Peter. "Yeah, we can enter the race and we might do okay, but that's as far as we're willing to promise at this point." Well, I'll bet you can guess the end of the story. Porsche won that race. The next year, they won first and third, and the year after they won first, second, and third. Of course, the pride came back. The morale became an asset rather than a liability. And lo and behold, profits rolled in. Peter's risk had worked. There's a little side story to this leadership drama. Peter told me that the rules of those races were made by the manufacturers, the big guys. Every time Porsche won, those same guys changed the rules. Peter said they just didn't get it. By their sheer size and wealth, had they left the rules the same each year, the big guys would have been able to overcome the Porsche advantage. But every time the rules were changed, the advantage went to Porsche. Porsche was smaller, more creative, faster, and more flexible than those industry giants. The main point to take home is that this whole success story hinged on one leader's courage to risk his job, his reputation, and his pride by putting it all on the line to let his followers know that he meant business. Peter defined business as helping the people reinvent, recreate, and restore a great brand and a great company to its former greatness. That's not only good business, it's a noble cause. I told you that I made up what I thought people would want from work. But just a few years ago, a massive survey was done that asked a very key question to the people who do the work. The question was, what do you want out of work? The answers are very interesting. Here are the top 5, the hierarchy of wants, if you will. I want to work for a company that I can be proud of, one that is profitable and growing, one that contributes to the planet and its inhabitants. 2, a company that helps me grow by teaching me new skills and competencies that I can market inside or outside the company. 3, gives me a chance to have a voice that's listened to, heard, and certainly, when appropriate, acted upon. 4, retains the best people, especially those that represent the soul of the organization. And 5, pays a fair wage, some of which is performance-based. The interesting fact that this survey pointed out was that these top 5 remained the top 5 no matter the age, from 20 to 70, the gender, or ethnic background of the employees. It seems that ideally what people want from work, the place they spend the majority of their time, runs deeper than cultural traditions, learned habits, or even gender. So if employees are customers who buy work from us, how hard can it be for us to give them what they really want? It wouldn't be hard at all if every supervisor, manager, or leader saw this opportunity as the most important part of their jobs. Is there anything more important than this? Very little of what they want can come from a fear-based control command culture. Perhaps the answer comes to us from asking the question, how much do we need their 8, 9, 10 commitment? Once again, we reap what we sow. As leaders or leaders-to-be, let's ask another tough question to all leaders. Across the board, how are we doing tending our garden of human potential? Or more specifically, how are we really doing with Dr. Deming's strong advice to drive fear out of the organization? Let me read you the words of an expert on the subject of human potential, Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer, professor of organizational behavior at Stanford. Dr. Pfeffer has written a number of business books, including The Human Equation, Building Profits by Putting People First. Pfeffer recently wrote the foreword to The Human Capital Edge by Dr. Pfau and Dr. Kay, another book with plenty of research to back up their findings about the underutilization of human talent. Dr. Pfeffer's foreword begins by asking this question, and I quote, "Will companies ever learn?" It continues, "You would think that we would get it by now. What with the war for talent metaphor, the many writings by pundits talking about the importance of intellectual capital rather than physical assets in today's economy, the fact that CEOs and even strategy consulting firms have come to realize that having a great strategy without great people to implement it won't do much. With all these forces in play, one might expect that companies would have done the things required to attract and retain people. One might expect companies to be developing and unleashing the talent and motivation of their people. But they haven't done these things, at least not as much as one might expect. Sometimes, I think, not much has changed at all." He then went on to say, "I receive numerous and depressing emails from professional people, managers, engineers, software programmers, the very people that many companies supposedly struggle to find and keep. They wrote me describing bosses who screamed at them and threatened them, companies that didn't let them make decisions or fully use their abilities, leaders who did not listen, and toxic work environments where what was required to get ahead was mostly the ability to win in some zero-sum competition for status." Wow! Those are strong words that need to be listened to by any leader. I think the professor sums up this challenge of leadership pretty eloquently. Whereas Pfeffer said he had received emails describing autocratic punishing behavior on the part of people in power, I have seen with my own eyes this toxic behavior.